Following on from our cruise on the Sea of Galilee, we find ourselves here at a museum, which is kind of fitting because this museum houses an ancient Galilee boat, also known as the Jesus boat. And it's important for us as Christians because this was the sort of boat that Jesus and his disciples was used, and it's dated back to the 1st century AD. And it obviously played a large role in the life of Jesus and his ministry on these shores.
Where's the news? So when you talk about what you see in the news, the news is right here, all around you. This is what you call the classic West Bank, all right? Yes?
Yes, Michael.
It wasn't long after we'd left the Jesus boats and taken a short trip in the bus, we find ourselves here on the Mount of Beatitudes, which is believed to be the setting for Jesus' most famous discourse, the Sermon on the Mount. And here we are overlooking the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee, and it is one of the most beautiful, serene places to be in the Holy Land.
Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye, when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven.
Dad and I are now inside the church of the Beatitudes. The church itself is an octagonal church, so there are 8 sides of the church, obviously each side representing the 8 Beatitudes that Jesus spoke about in his Sermon on the Mount. I mean, they're walking through the mount and seeing the church and the lovely gardens that are up there and the amazing view that you get. It's easy to feel the peacefulness and the serenity of the beautiful place, but the Sermon on the Mount for me was Jesus calling Israel to a new life, and you can't help but think that there's a part of that message that was quite radical and demanding and even revolutionary. We've only been in the bus a wee while, having just left the Mount of Beatitudes, and here we are at Peters Primacy, which is believed to be the location, the site of where Jesus made his third appearance to his disciples after his resurrection. And we all know how the story goes. The disciples were out fishing. They look to the shores and see someone that resembles Jesus. Jesus calls them over and he cooks them breakfast on a charcoal fire. And this place here, there's this rock and stone in the middle of this church. This is the place that is believed to be where Jesus had cooked them breakfast. This was also the location of where Peter was challenged 3 times by Jesus with the question, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" And it was Peter's positive response to this threefold question or challenge that cancelled out the threefold denial of Jesus the night before his crucifixion. And Jesus commissioned Peter to feed my lambs, tend to my sheep, feed my sheep. And this reinstated Peter as the head of the apostles. Here we are in Capernaum, or Kapanaumi in Samoan, and you think back to the stories in the Gospels of what occurred in this little town. It's the place where Jesus healed the centurion's servant. It's the place where he cured the paralyzed man. He cures Peter's mother-in-law here, and he teaches in the local synagogue. There are just so many events that we read about all the time in the Gospels, and it was pretty special to be here.
Now, let's start from Capernaum. What means Capernaum? Capernaum. We all say Capernaum. Well, Kapar is Kfar. Kfar means little city, town. Kapar is a little city. The other part of the name is Naum. So there is the city of Naum. Who was this Naum or Nahum in Hebrew? We don't know. But we know about one name in the Bible, Naum. Naum. Who was Naum? Prophet. He was a prophet. So there is this name, Naum. Now, I want to tell you something very interesting. Naum is not a Jewish name. Naum is not a Jewish name. We found in the scripts, Naum is probably comes from Greek or Akkad. It's not a Jewish name. But it came into Judaism. So there were Jewish that called themselves. He was probably the founder of the city, a very important place, a very important man, a rich man. So Naum, Capernaum, the city of Naum, Naum or Nahum in Hebrew. Now let's watch in our front. So we see a little something in the middle, and then an octagonal. What we see, it's eight sides. What? Sides or walls, and there another one. So, in the main, that was the house of Peter, right there. How do we know it was the house of Peter? There was the name Peter, the name Jesus, and little signs of fish. Remember, they were worrying because of the Sadducees. They were worrying about the Romans, so they had this little sign, fish. If I do this and you do this, we are from the same. We are from the same. I don't know how to call it. Same group. Okay. So their signs were fish, and they found marks or fish of the name Peter and the name Jesus in Greek and Aramaic, right on the walls, right here inside. Oh. Then it became a gathering place when about 200, 300 years after Jesus, Peter started to gather. Remember, it becomes a memorial place where everything happens. It's a law. It's a rule in Israel. Where there is a place, holy place, it becomes a gathering place, like in Nazareth, like in Tapcha right here, in Jerusalem, and a lot of places. It became a gathering place. So this is the first gathering place for those new path people, meaning we call them in the world. So if you wanna say this is the first Christian gathering place or church. It was not a church yet. Of course not. No church. We're talking about the year 80, 90, 100. Okay, they would gather. Peter is still alive here. He would go after to Jaffa, remember? Okay, so they would gather here, talk about Jesus, the miracles, everything that happened. And then in the 6th century and the 7th century, we already have the outside octagonal, which is a real church, kind of a church, gathering place. Okay, so the main, it's what we call Insula Sacra. Insula is kind of house or room. Sacra, secret, holy. Okay, so this is Insula Sacra, and this is already a gathering room. Both. Remember the reviving of his mother-in-law. So it happens right here, and he would help her, and he would revive her. She was very sick. Remember the miracle? Yes. Yes. Okay. Now we turn our hands over here, and we see a synagogue.
That was pretty special to know that we were standing right outside the house of Peter in Capernaum. And in fact, Capernaum is one of only a handful of sites in the Holy Land that has really strong archaeological evidence to support some of the biblical references. And as we make our way over to the synagogue, this synagogue here was built on top of the original synagogue that Jesus would have taught at while he spent his time here in Capernaum. And knowing that was pretty special too.
Listen, don't forget, I said community synagogue. This is a community center. Everyone, everywhere in these times, until the 14th, 15th century synagogue, it's a community center. It's a place to study, it's a place to eat, to provide food for the poor and for the people. Okay? But this is true. This is true. Favors or praying starts really late, and this is another kind of philosophy or this is a very late tradition, a pray. They would sit here and read the Bible. They would 3 times a week, and they would remember they were talking about the parasha, the prophet or the Genesis or part of the Bible. Just read it, and that's enough. Telling our history, that's enough. Pray would come later. Let's go.
We visited many sites where it was often only based on historic tradition to be the place of a certain biblical event. But here in Capernaum was the existence of strong archaeological evidence to definitively rule out any uncertainty, that we can say for sure that this was in fact the actual town where Jesus stayed, and it was here where he was based during the years of his ministry, that it was here where Peter lived and we got to see his house. It was right here where Jesus recruited Matthew the tax collector, and to top it all off, it was here in the synagogue of Capernaum that Jesus taught and delivered his sermon on the bread of life. And to see Dad taking it all in as if he was featuring in his own historic documentary of the Holy Land on the History Channel, that for me was really satisfying and rewarding.